My name is Wanda Wright, and I'm the director for the Office for Veteran and Military Academic Engagement. And I just want to talk a little bit about our office. We have three pillars that we invoke in our mission, and our vision is really to make sure that military affiliated students are supported at ASU. And those three pillars incorporate teaching, research, and community engagement. Veteran Voices being one of our community engagement platforms. And the teaching piece is we have an applied military and veteran studies program. It's a Bachelor of Arts program that really looks at military and veteran studies. It's interesting because I just got off of a meeting. I'm part of the Veteran Studies Association. It's a national group, and their whole mission is about studying veterans. And it's an important aspect of what we do in our office. Plus, I think it's an important aspect that a lot of universities should make sure that they're looking at. So teaching is really important. We also have a contract with the Naval Community College, and we teach active duty students. If you didn't know that, now you do. Research, we do research in-house in the College of Integrative Sciences and Arts. I have 4 OVMA fellows who do research on all kinds of things, student veterans, community veterans, and they're in their process right now. And we actually have an extra researcher this year. Someone came to our office and said they needed a sponsor, and so we decided to sponsor a young lady who's looking at neurobio enhancements. So the military is looking at wearables and actually enhancements for your to put on you.
Implantables, which is, yeah.
Thank you.
They're
Implantables.
BCIs, yes. And so if you're
Yes.
interested in that, we're doing a webinar on Thursday. I can send you the link, but if you want to
Yeah.
hear about what's going on with that, that's a whole other world.
So interesting, right? So interesting. And so she's been doing her research on that, and we've been following her. And so research is getting, I think, a little bit bigger part of our mission than it first was. So then our third one is community engagement, and we do veteran voices. We have music for vets. We have a songwriting class, a guitar class. We do events. So this week's full of events, and next week's full of events. We do a lot of things during Salute to Service, and so we really try to be out there for our students to support them. And our office is in the Arizona Center in the downtown area. So for those students who are in that area who might be watching, come by and visit with us. We have a really great lounge, and we have cookies and coffee. So come on by. And so I think this Veteran Voices program is very, very important to hear the voices of veterans and to really educate veterans. And so I'm going to now introduce our special guest that we've invited to speak to the students and community today. First, I'll introduce Cynthia Prado. She's a transition specialist with Hire Heroes USA, where she empowers U.S. military veterans or U.S. military members, veterans, and military spouses to succeed in the civilian workforce. She's an Army National Guard veteran. She served 6 years with the 260th Military Intelligence Battalion as an interrogator and a Spanish linguist. She is certified life coach, life and success coach, and certified veteran career strategist. Thank you for joining us, Cynthia. Next, we have Anthony Courtwright. He's built a distinguished career defined by service, leadership, and a deep commitment to connecting people with opportunities. His professional journey began with 22 years of military service in the United States Army. I was going to say, whoo, but I can't really say it because I wasn't in the Army. As a 25W telecommunication operations chief, where he specialized in building, managing, and securing global communication networks. After retiring from military service, Tony transitioned to the civilian workforce with the same dedication to service. Thank you for joining us, Anthony. And then finally, but not finally, we have Joe Warhol, a native of Circle Pines, Minnesota, a 13-year Marine Corps GWAT Afghanistan combat veteran who now calls Peoria, Arizona home. After his time in uniform, both active duty and reserve, Joe started working in the veteran and military advocacy space. Continued his career of service in higher education at Arizona State University, yay. At Pat Tillman Veterans Center as a school certifying official and benefits advisor, and then the admissions office as a veteran military recruitment coordinator. All right, so I'll start off with the same question for everybody, the first question. So many student veterans struggle to describe their military experience in civilian terms. What are some strategies to make military skills and accomplishments relatable to civilian employers? We'll start with you, Cynthia.
Rip off the Band-Aid. So interestingly enough, I was telling Stacy earlier that I have a resume that I've been working on since last year. This is a Navy veteran with 25 plus years of experience as an executive chef, and wants to go into law enforcement. But now he switched it on me and he wants to go into management. So I've switched his resume from executive chef to law enforcement to now we're doing operations management. So I guess the best thing to do here is leave out acronyms, spell it out. And if it still sounds a little bit too military, you know, I always like to scrub it through ChatGPT and say, what is the civilian equivalent of this position, right? And then go from there. The job titles that you've had in the military are easily translatable to, you know, I have a pilot that wants to go into executive leadership now. So his resume, you know, as a pilot, you know, I can put, you know, senior executive and doing the things that he did. So it's not so much putting these things in your resume, but also be able to articulate them in an interview. Because maybe you're in the interview, you're in there, and all of a sudden all the acronyms start coming out again. So making sure you kind of catch yourself and really study your resume with the words that you put in and what the employer put on their job application. So mirroring what they did in the job application and seeing what words you can tweak and putting it in your resume. So that's high level. The best thing that you can do is just kind of mirror their language and learn their language.
Joe, do you got anything to add to that?
You know, I don't know. Cynthia hit the nail on the head there. But yeah, where do I even start? As far as the application and resume part goes, I completely agree with Cynthia, and I don't really disagree on anything. But one thing I would add to that for all the veterans out there is, you know, I know it gets, you know, drilled into us at basic training and throughout our time in service. You hear about integrity, you know, doing the right thing when nobody's looking, all that kind of stuff, right? That kind of goes in one ear out the other at a certain point because you live it, you breathe it, it's part of who you are. The most important part of going into the civilian world is learning the value of, call it a specific leadership or character trait, and tailoring it to a specific organization. Because I could sit and say all day, oh, I'm a great leader, which I don't think is something to really brag about because it's just something you show. But like I prided myself in my time in the Marine Corps, being a senior enlisted leader, being a staff NCO, being a leader of my Marines. But that leadership in the same capacity doesn't translate. It just simply doesn't. Everyone wants to hear about veterans and different leadership styles, but ultimately what it comes down to is what does your leadership style mean to a civilian organization, and what kind of value can you provide to that organization with those leadership traits, with those character traits? How can you translate them to show value for the civilian job?
Oh, that's a very good point, I think. So Anthony, what would you add to this conversation?
Right, man, that tough to follow. Right. I think we nailed everything. I think I'll go along with Joe. I can't stress enough about matching uh whatever job that you're applying for and making sure that those skills are inside of that resume. Uh when I retired out of the military, I was a veteran and college recruiter with a company, and oftentimes I was talking to military personnel and they were like, I was in the infantry, I was a quartermaster, I was this, like all of these hard jobs that are not very translatable to a job in the civilian side. But I'm like, what else do you have? Do you have that leadership? Do you have team management skills, problem solving, right? Problem solving under pressure, op operational efficiency. These are all things that, it's almost like were bred into us from day one, right? So making sure that you're putting those items in a bullet in a star format, situation, task, action, result, and making sure that you're telling that story inside of your resume.
So I guess the question I would have for you, Anthony, when you say that, what are some of the key elements that stand out? We've talked about cover letters. We've talked about what are some of the key things that a resume should have on them in order to make the impact on the organization?
Well, not every organization needs a cover letter. I love cover letters, especially for veterans, as cover letters are talking about, hey, I might not be a great fit, but that cover letter is telling this employer why I'm a great fit outside of my resume, right? So some things that you want to make sure that are inside of the resume are some of the skills that you have and making sure that you don't put some of those not so needed skills inside of your resume, right? Like when I got out of the military and I started looking for a job, oh my goodness, I wanted to put everything under the sun that I had did in the military on my resume, right? Like, oh my gosh, I'm a paratrooper, I'm a combat lifesaver. I was doing all of these things and it wasn't relevant to the job that I was applying for. So I was really just taking up space. So making sure that those relevant items from my career in the military is on my resume and to the job description. So I'll let everybody else chime in too.
Well, I was going to change subject for a second because I think that's really great. But Cynthia mentioned deployment. I think that's what I heard you say, deployment in someone. So I've deployed. How do I talk about that on my resume? I feel like that's a significant event in my life. So how do I talk about that? Go ahead, Cynthia.
Uh, so, yeah, so the majority of my clients have deployed, and the way that I put it in there, what's important is if you still have your fit reps, your NCOERs, your OERs, or any eval from the military, is looking at that and that deployment. I just recently took mine out actually to write something to kind of relay what my deployment was and how, and it's not tailored to interrogation. I've never once interrogated. So if you served in the military, you wore several hats, right? But I just saw someone's deployment where, he's like, I really want to put it in there because I want to go into law enforcement. So it was really tailored to what he did there. And again, bringing in those skills that Anthony and Joe are talking about, because that really translate into that civilian workspace. And because you could have been deployed, I interviewed and I did not interrogate, right? So I also created a lot of PowerPoint presentations while I was over there because I had to give presentations on the area. So using those skills for what I actually did over there really helps in tailoring that section. And plus, I mean, you can always revert back to what your MOS is. But let's say you are on deployment as a senior enlisted individual, now you're a supervisor. Now you're in charge of several people in, your unit. And you are also in charge of maintaining valuable equipment. So if you're going into those operations or leadership roles, I had a budget. You have a budget when you go on deployment. So those are the types of skills that you want to be including in your resume.
Yeah,
Great point.
It really is. Those translatable words are so important. That's why this is so important, so that our students and those who are on here can really see that there are people to help you do these things, right? That they can help you translate those words and translate those ideas into something meaningful for a resume. Joe.
Yeah, I'd just like to add to what Cynthia was talking about. Like, you go on a deployment, and I can only speak for the Marine Corps, obviously, but if you go on a deployment, you're on nonstop working party until you get in country. And most people kind of understand what that means. Guess what? Especially if you're an NCO or some sort of leader, you don't even have to be a senior enlisted leader. After a deployment, going forth, back and forth, like you are a subject matter expert. And I say that loosely, but you are a subject matter expert in manpower, in logistics, packing big quad cons, packing an airplane, all that sort of stuff. Put that on a resume. Obviously, you're not going to tell a story of grilling your junior Marines or service members about something they're not doing right, but you can put that on there like, hey, I managed X amount of people, you know, moved through X amount of pounds of equipment, and if that fits that role that you're applying for in the civilian world, absolutely use it because it's a great story. And most interviewers, most hiring managers, when they see kind of your eyes light up, like, oh, I get to talk about this, they love that. But again, I'll go back to what I said the first time. If you can't relate the experience to value in the civilian workforce, it just isn't going to work.
Yeah, Anthony, do you have anything to add to that?
I think just where you're placing it inside of the resume. When I got out of the military and started compiling my resume, and this is only because I was in for such a long time, I I didn't have any place to put that I deployed. So it was a bullet inside of one job description that I was doing, maybe as ComSec security, communication security, or tactical radio security for special operations, right? And those deployments and what I did fell underneath. Hey, I did ComSec security in Iraq and Afghanistan, Bosnia, Kosovo, right? And again, telling the story under a bullet. So just the location inside of the resume.
Got it. Got it. So underneath particular job.
Jobs.
Yes. Okay. All right. That's good. All right. So how can veterans highlight leadership, teamwork, and problem-solving skills without relying on military jargon? Go ahead, Joe.
I'll go just because it kind of goes hand in hand with the first answer I gave.
Mhm.
We talk about all those leadership traits, all those different things, character traits that we all hold near and dear to our hearts from our time in uniform. And then again, it goes in 1 year in, 1 year out the other, as your time progresses in uniform. And then when you get out, you're like, well, I want nothing to do with that anymore because it was so ingrained in you, you want to kind of move past it. Guess what? Those leadership traits, those character traits, call it integrity, humor, different things like that, those are what's really gonna, if you can show the value of that trait to the organization, that's where you're going to become extremely successful. And being able to articulate it.
Right. That's the key.
Articulation,
Articulating
yep,
it, right?
yep.
Cynthia?
Yeah, so I have a really awesome document that I use at work, and they're resume action verbs. This is what you're going to start your bullet point with. So if you led a project, you chaired, controlled, coordinated, executed, headed, operated. If you managed a team, you mentored, you guided, you facilitated, you directed. Start with those and then lead with your experience. And then what was the outcome of that? So trained and mentored staff in food and safety, cost control and process improvement, which elevated performance and morale. So you're then showing, you can mentor and coach a large amount of people in this situation, and make sure you're always ending with the results and outcome of that. And if you can put a number to it, that's even better.
Great. So Anthony, what's some common mistakes you see when veterans are trying to translate their experiences, and how can it be avoided?
Ooh, man, I'm going to talk about the acronyms. We live for all the acronyms. And I think one of the big things is even translating the acronyms inside of a resume doesn't cut it, right? Like
Mm,
90% of employers that you work with still don't know what that is, right? If you say NCOER on a resume or non-commissioned officer review, whatever the case may be, for if it's Army, Navy, right? Like somebody from the civilian side or a recruiter is still like, what's he talking about? Right? So I think taking the acronyms out as well as explaining what an acronym might be or replacing it. So I know Cynthia, you were talking about this earlier about, hey, if if it's a sergeant or a platoon sergeant, is it going to be a team leader or a supervisor, or are you C-suite or whatever the case may be, making sure that you explain it if it needs to be explained, or just replace the word with something that can be articulated by a civilian employer. I think that's the biggest one that I see.
yeah, yeah. Well, we do internships in our office. And so these are the things that we see. And it's more about attitude than, say, the actual paper.
No,
That the work that it takes to actually get your resume into the right space, it takes effort and takes time. And generally, I mean, even I need help with my resume, and I was in '06 in the military. So, you don't want to think that after coming out of the military that you know exactly what it takes to write a resume and to do an interview, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. You really should try to be humble about it and go and get support for it. You will hear these good ideas. They will help you put it together, and you will have a much more improved resume. We get students that come to us all the time. They don't want an hands-on, and she could verify for me that they don't want to go through that process. They just want to send their resume to the employer, and it's not going to work. It's going to fail every time. You got to take the time. You got to put in the effort to get that resume just right. And then the other side of that is being able to rewrite your resume for the job that you want. And that takes effort and time as well. You can't just keep sending your resume to places and think that's going to work, right? So those are the things we've kind of seen in our office that our students are kind of trying to they eventually figure it out. They do, but it takes a minute sometimes. Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Wanda. Am I allowed to disagree with you? Is that okay?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. This is a
It's
dialogue.
it's it's just not a word you used, and it's not in the same context. But you said humble, so I think being humble is, definitely something that needs to be thought of. But I would tell you, if you know exactly what's on your resume and you know exactly what you're going into this interview for, do not be humble at all. Go in
Mm,
there and own the space. And one thing that I had a bad habit of, and I've heard it from hundreds of different veterans that I've worked with working in higher education and now with where I'm at now in healthcare, a lot of veterans will just say, well, I was just this. I was just that. I just did this. Stop with the just language, own it, make sense of it, have the value piece, the value proposition there. So when you go into the interview, what you speak of is with confidence and it matches what's on your resume.
yes. No,
can
I
I chime
totally
in
agree
super
with you.
quick?
Yeah, go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and I think this is probably number three on what I think is wrong, right? But a lot of folks don't know how to champion themselves,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? Like, hey, they have imposter syndrome. They don't think they're good enough. They don't think they're good enough for the job, and they're trying to get the job off of just, hey, let me just throw my name in the hat and
I
maybe I'll
was
get
I was
it.
I was that guy, Anthony. It took me years, now set all 5 years off contract, 7 years out of uniform. It's taken me this long to really understand what that means, and that's why I speak about it so passionately.
Yep. Great point. Great point.
Yeah, great. Thank you, guys. All right, so the next question is, what advice would you give a student veteran who may not yet have much civilian work experience? Because I feel like that's a thing too, where I know I was in the military. I was in there for just right 4 years. I was just for 4 years. I don't really have much to say, and I don't really have any civilian experience. How do you talk them through that?
Can you repeat the question again, Wanda?
Yeah,
Sorry.
what advice would you give to student veterans who may not yet have much civilian work experience?
I mean,
Go ahead.
experience is experience to me, but if we're worried about civilian work experience, I mean, you're in school, you are being among other civilians, right? Or what if you're volunteering? Use that to your advantage. So even though you're not getting paid, that is work experience. You are volunteering for an organization doing a job. So put that on your resume as work experience. We work with a lot of military spouses that haven't even worked for 2 years, right? Because of the PCSing and moving. So I do put on their resume, head of the household. You're a project manager now, So you are managing all the projects, the groceries, the budget. Put that in there. That's work experience. That's not easy, especially if you have a family that's larger than if it's just, if you have one or more kids. So, and then you're taking them to soccer practice or band practice. And now you're the band mom or the band parent. That's work experience. So that's what I tell my clients. I'm like, you've been working this whole time. You just need to relate it into your resume.
I'm right in the middle of Bandtober. I'm telling you, as a band mom, it is a full-time job right now. So I'm telling you right now. But I agree completely. And also PCSing and moving and managing all of that, that is a full-time job. I mean, when you're doing all that, that's a lot. And moving schools and yeah.
I think this goes exactly back to what I just mentioned about, kind of not being humble, if you will, about what you're doing. Like you weren't just a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad or whatever. You did X, Y, and Z and lay it out in call it a clinical fashion to present value.
Yeah, I also think there are applied experiences in college that they need to recognize that they are doing. Anthony, can you talk a little bit about some of the applied experiences that career services may be offering?
Well, yes, before I jump into that, just any of the projects that they're doing in school, internships, all of these things that they're doing while they're here at ASU, right, can translate into experience. Getting experience from employers and coming to our office, they can get career mapping, they can go on job shadows and learn a little bit more about what an employer's doing, go on site visits to also, go and just look at a facility to see what that's like. But inside of a resume, the resume is the art of storytelling, right? You're going to be inside, you're telling a story to whoever's looking at it. And even if they have no experience and they were a babysitter, right? You can make that look good inside of a resume, right? Hey, I've been in charge of child safety. I was a child provider. I was CPR certified, right? Just all of these things that'll make it sound better than just I was a babysitter in charge of 2 kids, right? So coming to our office and us helping you create that story or helping you see that story in a different light is some of the services that our office provides.
Yeah, that's awesome, Anthony. Thank you very much for that. Because I
Yeah.
think these examples are really good because I think those that are on with us today can really now let that reflect on that and sink in that, wow, I really do have some skills that they might not have even thought about before. So that's really great. All right, we're going to kind of change it over to the interview process. So how can veterans respond when interviewers ask about deployments or sensitive experiences in a respectful and professional way? I know this has happened to people. You know, employers are curious, and I'll give you a quick example, and then I'll pick you, Joe.
Okay.
I was over at the Phoenix Police, and they were talking to us about, they know that they have people who are interviewing who have PTSD. And you know, there's phases to go through the police and then to the academy. So they pick up on information through these phases. And they're like, what do? We don't want to not hire them, but we're afraid to hire them. And so, you know, my position was just ask them. Ask them in a delicate way about where they're at in their mental health journey. And, you know, hopefully they'll tell you the truth. And you can kind of work with that to figure out, you know, if they need to go to the VA regularly or something, you can still hire them. And so how do we talk to our employers who are asking these kinds of questions? Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I'm glad you started with that, Wanda, talking about the PTSD piece and maybe other mental health issue pieces. Because and I don't know if it was you, Wanda, or Stace who mentioned, imposter syndrome. Oh, no, I think it was you, Anthony. Sorry, talking about imposter syndrome and all those things that kind of sit on our shoulders when, say, we're sitting in an interview and a potential employer does want to ask, maybe if it's just a genuine off the cuff question, like, oh, tell me about that a little bit more, just to maybe see how you react to it. Maybe it's not an official interview question, and you will get those. Happened to me. But again, how do you turn that or translate it? I'll go back to what I mentioned, kind of every time I've spoken up here, talk about value. A civilian organization, a civilian employer, construction, insurance, higher education, health insurance, where I'm at now, different areas, they're going to ask you about specific things and how you provide that value. So you can talk about your deployment, but be very quick with the military side of the story and turn it on your own to turn into, oh, well, I did this here, and then here's what I've done here as well, and this is what I can do for you, type of thing. And don't be humble about it. Tell them, this is what I can do for you. This is this role. This is where I'm going to excel.
Great. Cynthia, you want to add anything?
No, that was fantastic. And I would go back to what Anthony said, is using that STAR method. If you practice that STAR method, you can easily bring the interview back to your accomplishments, your skills, and again, what you did in overseas or in deployment, and just sticking to those STAR kind of answers really helps. Because then you're not really talking about the whole military experience, and they don't really want to know that. So
Right.
they want to know how you can help the organization. So if you can bring it back to that, thank you for asking, this is what I did and this is how I helped, and this is the outcome of that. So yes, what Joe said.
Can you explain the STAR method again, in a little bit more detail?
I'm going to give that one to Anthony because
Okay.
I always mess it up. So I know he's versed in it. I was like,
Yeah,
wow,
go ahead,
he knows it
Anthony.
offhand. I have to always look it up.
Yeah, it's a good method to structure, right? If you can kind of get that thing in your brain before your interview. So could you explain it?
Yes, so situation S, right? It is identifying what the situation is. It is the whole reason for writing the bullet. Task, what task did you do inside of the situation, right? If I'm an operations sergeant, what was the task inside of being that operations sergeant, right? So it is, again, as we've talked about, right? Storytelling. What story are we trying to tell? So situation, task, action. What action past that did we do, right? And then result. What was the result, which is usually quantified in a number or qualitative data piece that helps sum up the whole statement. So situation, task, action, result, STAR method.
Great. Great.
I gotta throw out there, Wanda. Thank you for that, Anthony. But I gotta throw out there for all any Marines that are out there. We all know SMEAC, right? SEMEAC. Situation, mission, execution. Yeah, it's the same thing. Just translate it.
Got it. All right. Translating again.
Here we go with acronyms again.
Yes.
I don't know if my Marines have crayons around them to write stuff down, so I'm trying to explain it to them better.
All right. So now let's talk about this value sort of mindset. So we can get some examples maybe out there for our audience to talk about, character matters, right? We live by these honor codes. We have values based on them. I can tell you from my perspective, I live with my dad, who is a Army officer for 18, 19 years before I then went into the military. So my whole life, I have been surrounded by these values. And so trying to articulate those to an employer, how do we talk about those things? And not only just the actual code or values, but about how the job kind of intersects with those values so that when I present it to the employer, they really understand what I'm saying. So what kind of examples can we throw out? You can think about it for a second.
I'll go ahead. So think about, and I know I've said this multiple times in this, and I say it all the time. I kind of beat the dead horse with this word, but we all know integrity. We all know what integrity means in uniform. We all know what integrity means out of uniform. But how do you translate integrity, right? Because a lot of times people have a hard time just coming up with the definition as it is, other than the doing the right thing when no one's looking, right? But how do we translate integrity into a value proposition for an organization? And I could probably come up with 100 things, but the first thing that comes to mind for me is like taking initiative, right? No different than picking up a piece of trash off the ground, because we all know we've gotten yelled at for that at some point. But to go take it from that to, well, hey, I'm in a supply chain and I see that something's missing, and I need to take action on that because it's gonna provide us a value feedback, or it's gonna save my organization money, or sales call, something like that. Something gets missed. Take the initiative to step up and say something, because you never know. Kind of like no different than when we're in uniform. Closed mouths don't get fed. If you don't say something, you don't ask questions, or you don't bring something up, it's not going to happen. So don't be afraid to be that person, to just do the right thing, right? Have that integrity in that moment, even though it might not seem like integrity to you.
Right, right. And I love Anthony's storytelling, right? Because I think that's what gets you there is I have integrity. I need to tell the story to demonstrate I have that integrity. And so it could be a military story, because sometimes they're common, or it could be a civilian story that really talks to. In my case, I had to, as a civilian, as a vice principal, and my principal was taking money from the fund. She would eventually pay it back, but she was taking it from the fund. That's the example I give, that I had to confront my boss, even though I could have been fired, and tell her you can't do that anymore. Right? That's an example. That's a story. That's what employers want to hear. Right? All right. So I'm going to go to you, Anthony.
All right. So I'm going to go, if you don't know. One of the things we do is we tell a lot of students to research the company and make sure that your values match the company's values, right? And trying to find that out sometimes is very difficult. So usually towards the end of an interview, you can ask questions to the employer, right? And this might be an opportunity where you can find out, like, hey, let's see what the recruiter says, or the hiring manager, or whoever it is, right? Asked about what the value is, or what the core values are, the company culture. Like, how would you describe the core values or culture of a company or this company? What guides the way for teamwork and making decisions? Where can I read about the company's mission and their value statements? Right? These are great and important questions that you can ask at the end of the interview and see what they say. right? This is a two-way street in the interview process. So find out. This is where you're going to be living, working, living, working.
Yes. Yeah. Spending a lot of time, right? Cynthia.
So just to piggyback on what Anthony said, I went to my employer's core values, and because I do the research for any employer, and I look at their core values, their mission, their vision, and then if it really closely resembles my values, then I can really speak to it without hesitation, right? Like inclusion. Yes, being a veteran and helping other veterans does help, but sometimes we have justice involved veterans, and I don't judge anybody I work with. You're a veteran, I'm going to help you. We're going to find you a job. You know, yes, you have some barriers, but it's going to happen. We're going to find something for you. So going to their website and really doing the research really helps. And again, with the questions in an interview, my favorite question to ask, because it's part of my values, is how does your organization celebrate employees? Because I love celebrating, and that teaches me from them that they do celebrate their employees and that there's actual growth and people are happy. And that's what I want.
Great. That's a great question. I would have never thought to ask that at the end of the interview, but that's the value ones. I think I have actually asked that because, you don't know. And in this day and age, there are companies that do not great things. And you want to make sure you understand that before you join them, right? Like you said, you spend days and weeks with this particular organization you might be hired by, and you want to make sure you're going to enjoy that. All right. The next question is, what qualities do you think civilian employers most often overlook but should appreciate in veterans?
Their
I can
skills. I
start.
mean,
Oh,
all the skills we bring into for any employer. And I think employers, when they're looking for certification or a license or, a degree, I have someone retiring, a sergeant major that does not have a degree. And he's like, well, he goes, do I not have value for anybody because I don't have a degree? And I'm like, no, shoot, you have 30 years of experience in the Army. These are your skills. You do have these things. So I wish employers can see the skills that we are bringing to the table. It's interestingly enough, the state of Utah, today, they're bringing a bill to implement the skills that veterans bring into civilian licensing. So bringing those skills and actually licensing them and certifying them before they get into the workforce in the civilian. That's what Utah's trying to do right now. So I'm like, yes, finally.
That's great. That's good. That's good legislation to try to, because we recognize that, at least in Arizona, they did also a bill to allow the spouses to bring over their credentialing, licensing, law degrees, whatever they had, and not have to retest to be licensed in Arizona, which saves thousands and thousands of dollars and is important. And so that's the other thing people need to look at, is make sure you're in the right state that you want to work in, right? Because certain states give veterans more benefits than others. And I guess if you're remote, that doesn't matter as much, maybe, I don't know, but you want to consider that as well. All right. So now you guys are going to tell a story. Can you share a story or example of a veteran who successfully transitioned their military experience into a fulfilling civilian career, and what made the difference? I know you got a good example.
Am I
Going
allowed
through
to
the
tell my
Rolodex.
oh, am I allowed to tell my own story?
Yeah, certainly.
I don't like toot my own horn. Let's be honest. Yes, I do. I'll get on my soapbox for a minute. Um, when I left service, the transition was tough. Of course, it is for everybody, right? But I had a chip on my shoulder about like when I graduated from ASU. I was a staff NCO in the reserves at the time, had 9 years, 10 years of service, a bachelor's degree from Arizona State. I had operational experience in country. I had leadership experience, platoon sergeant, platoon commander, operations chief, all sorts of stuff. And I had a chip on my shoulder about where I was going to go and what I was going to do with all my experience and education. Let's just say I got humbled real quick. And I ended up going back on active duty, which was probably the best thing for me at the time, right after I graduated. I found out kind of later how to really translate and do the things that we're talking about here because I didn't have that when I was, 2016, when I was a senior at ASU. I wasn't listening to anybody. I had again, a chip on my shoulder, kind of an attitude about it, like, oh, I can go be the next COO of whatever organization because I have this experience and a college degree, right? And I think a lot of veterans get that. At least from my generation, we did. We were kind of, a lot of smoke was blown, if you will. Um, but where I became successful is when I learned to, I'm going to go back to it where I told you you're wrong before, Wanda, but where I became more humble, where, hey, this uniform is coming off officially. I'm not doing anything with it anymore. I learned through peers, through friends, through networking, and I emphasize networking, that the skills I brought are great, but it's learning to translate those skills into a value proposition for a role. That's what's important. And it took me honestly a couple different two different careers at three different organizations now to really understand that. Because coming out of uniform, ASU was my first job after leaving the Marine Corps officially. So I was surrounded by a great staff of people at the time, and few of which are still there at the Pat Tillman Veterans Center. I kind of moved on and up to the admissions office, kind of translated my skills of what I was capable of. I ended up leaving ASU, going to another university, being a project manager, being a program manager. That's where I learned those in service and from, real-time experience in the civilian world. And then now I stepped into healthcare where I would consider myself a subject matter expert with veterans experiences, benefits, and how to write a program to give that value proposition to an organization. And that's what landed me the job I'm in now is knowing what the value proposition is and then giving the employer what they want to hear and what they want tangible on the back end of it.
Great. That's a good story. And I honestly, Joe, I think a lot of us come out like that,
Yeah.
right? That it's an expectation that I was a colonel in the Air Force, and I had expectations of being C-suite person in an organization, and it did not happen.
Yeah.
And so you get humbled quick about, okay, we're in this environment, and you got to kind of adapt and figure out what you're going to do. And I think that's one of the biggest myths when you're transitioning out and you're going through TAP and your senior NCO or your colonel or whatever is saying you're going to get a lot of money out there because you have all these skills, and it's not true at all.
Nope.
Not true at all. And
I'm glad you mentioned just there being adaptable. We all know how to be adaptable in uniform, right? Guess what? You're going to be adaptable the same way, but in a different context.
right, in a different environment.
Yep.
Cynthia?
I have so many that I could share stories on, but I have one that he is retiring from the Marine Corps in 2004, does not have a degree yet. He called it a limited duty officer. I think that's what they're called. Because I was like, wait, I'm
limited duty
confused.
officer, LDO.
Yes. Highly intelligent, very skilled in technology. So what he's doing, which is something I wish all my clients would do, is that he is volunteering at his church with their technology for free so he can continue that experience and gain that civilian experience. But he's also reaching out and networking with civilian employers. He said, Cynthia, I reached out to about 8 civilian employers of where I want to be, where I want to work, where I researched the company, and just kind of reached out to someone in the position that I want to do, and just to do an informational interview. This is not an interview. This is to get information on what the day of the life looks like. He said all 8 people responded willing to talk to me. Now I have to manage my calendar. So he is doing such good work, and he's still in, but he's like, I'm not going to let not having a degree get in the way of, finding employment and good employment. And he's had 2 really good interviews that I hope he's still waiting to hear back from them. But what I see from him, one is resiliency that we all have, and confidence. He could easily be like, oh, I don't have a degree, no one's going to hire me, this, and go down that route. But he's been so confident and so sure of himself, and really just curious and eager to learn and grow, so he can really find the best position for him. And he's only looking really at 3 different companies that he's really interested in. But he sticks out to me right now from all my clients. I'm like, well, I wish all my clients would do this. Is go network, please go network. So
yeah, networking is a big key. Anthony, do you have a story?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna be like Joe, hone in on my own story. And, and I think the key for this story is overcoming fear. As I was retiring out of the military, my fear was coming out here to Arizona and not being in Texas anymore, right? Texas is a huge, huge, huge veteran state, right? Like, hey, they take care of their veterans. You couldn't go anywhere without like, hey, we're going to give you a military discount, right? They're asking you rather than us asking them. And when I came out here to Arizona, and I came out here because my son went to ASU, it I had this fear of not being able to get a job when I was retiring. And because of the research I was doing, like the homeless population for veterans was super high I'm not going to talk about how old I am, but back in the day. Right? So as we've all talked about already, networking, right? I started doing my resume. I went to TAP Transition Assistance Program, and they helped me out a lot. And then just talking to a lot of different resources that were recommended to me from TAP, and also just networking with people that were in the same situation as me, right? That helped give me the confidence to be like, hey, I don't have to worry about that. I'm not going to get a job. It's like, what job am I going to have? So having that confidence, like Joe was talking about, and going out there and being like, hey, there are 140,000 jobs out there right now in the Phoenix area. Which one is going to be mine? Right? Narrowing down what industry, what function I wanted to do. And I was a career changer. I worked telecommunications for special operations in the military. So I knew every radio system, computer, right? And I totally changed and got into human resources. So that's where my networking started. Like, who else is in this field? What certifications can I get? Who can I talk to be able to get a role that I wanted? And my first job out of the military was a veteran and college recruiter, right? It filled my bucket. It made me happy. And I was essentially giving back to a lot of veterans from across the US in any service, right? And I was helping them, educating them. And then I went on to work at American Express, where I was helping a lot of C-suite. So, working diversity recruitment and helping underrepresented minorities get into senior leadership roles at American Express. And then ASU knocked on the door.
Here you
Right?
are.
And here I am. I now work employer relations here at ASU, and I work with businesses from across the globe, right, to come to ASU and recruit students.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Great story. Yeah, I think there's common themes there, right? You got to have some confidence. You got to network. Networking is a big key, I think.
Network.
And you got to be persistent. You got to just keep at it till you find that right job. So we'll kind of conclude here with just one or two more questions. And also, I just want to remind the audience, there's a little question thing on your toolbar that you can ask questions as well if there's anybody in the audience who wants to ask questions. But what are some of the resources on or off campus that you would recommend for veterans working on resumes or interview preparation? Well, speak up. Tell them about yourselves.
Well, I mean, I work for Hire Heroes. It's free services. You know, we prepare that initial civilian resume, we enhance it, and then we have additional resources. So if you need additional training in getting that certification or license that you're not going to get through school, the big popular ones right now, you know, the PMP, the Lean Six Sigma, cybersecurity type, Security Plus, Network Plus, all those. We have training partners that provide that. So, and we have mentors. We have mentors working in the industry that can help you network within your industry. We also help with mock interviews, and you get a transition specialist like me that will bug you every 30 days to kind of hold you accountable and making sure you're doing the steps that you need to be doing to find employment and not getting stuck. So yeah, so if that's what I do on a daily basis here.
Great. Thanks, Cynthia. Anthony?
Yes, so ASU Career Services. You can make an appointment through Handshake. You can also do your job searches through Handshake, but our office will definitely help you in navigating whatever help that you need, right? We'll help prep, we'll help with the resumes, cover letters, interview tips, tricks, techniques, best practices. We'll help you with all of that. And then outside of that, resources that I had were like ONET, Military Crosswalk, which helped translate my military into civilian speak, so to speak, right? And it offers the same thing, a lot of what Cynthia was talking about. Military.com does the same thing. It holds master classes in interviewing and resume techniques. If you're not part of an organization called Student Veterans of America, they also hold they have success hubs in resume and interviewing tips and tricks, techniques, things like that. Of course, Career One Stop, if you ever went to TAP class, that they hone in on that one. So much like ONET, it has a military crosswalk where it'll translate a lot of your MOS type training. LinkedIn, VA, and of course, Cynthia's group.
Joe, do you have
I
any
say use
recommendations?
all your resources.
All the
Use all,
resources, mostly free.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So, Goodwill is out there and they have an actual military and veteran job center on Indian School and like 20th Street, something like that.
Yeah,
There's
16th
also
Street.
16th Street. Be Connected is out there as well. They have career navigation. There's also, there's plenty of organizations out there. We have some really good ones here, so reach out to them if you're in need. But I know a lot of the students that are on today, some of them are going to be graduating soon. And so this is what they need to hear now in regards to getting prepared for finding that great job out in the world. And so I'd just like to thank the three of you so much for coming today and speaking to our students and our community online and really telling the truth about how it is out there, right? and giving really, honestly, really great examples of how things are. So thank you all very, very much. And that concludes our Veteran Voices for this month. Thanks, you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Wanda. Thank you.
Welcome.